It's all to play for still.
I think so. Do you want to bet against us?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to For the Love of Paul McGrath podcast. And as you probably saw there on the splash screen, today is all about DONYELL Malen. Been a lot of rumours, a lot of news coming out about him with regards to transfer potentially towards to Aston Villa. Seems that even in the last 10 minutes before this podcast that the goalpost might be shifting with regards to fees and stuff like that. Everything there I take with an absolute wheelbarrow load of salt whenever I see those rumours come out, because there's always a deal to be done with every player. But we're not here to talk about rumours or conjecture or pricing or anything. I've got the wonderful Michael from Football Oranje, and I've got the wonderful Brian as well from the Dortmund Dispatch on to talk today about DONYELL Malen. One of the biggest reasons I wanted to get you two of you guys on, and I said it to you just off screen there, was because I think there's a very interesting dichotomy here between this player's time at PSV, his time in the international scene as well, and also his time at Dortmund. So firstly, thank you so much, guys, for coming on. I'm going to go to Brian first. Brian, thanks a million for popping on, just because, Mike, you've been on here a couple of times before, and Brian is the new kid on the block. So thanks a million for jumping on, Brian, and from the Dortmund Dispatch. Brian is all the way over in New York, was it you said? Brian?
Yeah, Neil. Thank you very much for having me here. New York. So it's a bit of a different time zone from you guys, but yeah. So
cold snap over there as well, because it's absolutely freezing here in Ireland.
They're saying it's supposed to be one of the coldest Januaries in a while. Oh. So yeah, cold temperatures are coming. So, but we'll be ready.
Yeah, absolutely. How did you become a Dortmund fan, Brian?
So I actually became a Dortmund fan, I want to say it was around 2011-ish. It was right before the Euros were held in Poland and Ukraine. So I'm of Polish heritage. So that's kind of when I was just really getting into football and stuff like that. And I was looking for a team that had some Polish internationals. Obviously, we had Jakub Błaszczykowski, Robert Lewandowski, and Łukasz Piszczek playing for Dortmund. So that kind of is what kind of maybe gravitate towards the team, but I stayed for the ethos and everything else about it because it's just a wonderful club. You know, the fans are wonderful, team's wonderful. It's just a great time to be a Dortmund fan.
Excellent. And Mike, obviously you are my go-to guy for anything Dutch football. I think this could be your fourth time being on the podcast now. So always great to have you back. And as I say, with everything that's going on with Dutch football at the moment, it's in a lot of ways I find it's exciting in Dutch football at the minute because they're churning out quite a lot of good players. There's a lot of good players going to that league at the moment, but also it must be a small bit disappointing because a lot of them are starting to leave the league also as well, a small bit quicker, I think, than normal. But what's the crack with you guys over Football Oranje, Michael?
Yeah, always good stuff over Football Oranje. Go and check it out. Get your Dutch football fix over there in English. But yeah, Dutch football players, they always leave the league. I think we're just used to it. DONYELL Malen was one of them. Left quite young, but I think he was ready at the time to leave PSV and have a new challenge. And still in play for PSV and also for the national team. I think that's why it's good to get us both on here, because this is a player that's had a career over two sort of lives, if you like. And I think there's something in there for the Premier League. It sounds like something might well be coming now. Maybe is going to happen. But yeah, I'll be interested to hear everyone's thoughts on him, actually, as it's a bit of a mixed bag.
Yeah. I'm going to start with you, I suppose, first as well, Mike, because he started off his career at Arsenal. He moved then from Arsenal. He ended up at PSV. That's where he kind of hit the lights. He was scoring a lot of goals. And I think he had a 1-2 in the league record at PSV, and obviously that catapulted him into the international team as well. So talk to me a small bit about his time at PSV. Obviously you would have followed him, or you would have watched him, I suppose, at that time. What was he like? Did he kind of hit the ground running, or was he somebody that was kind of like the I suppose play was forced upon him? What kind of a striker was he?
Good questions. I remember him breaking through. Obviously, you had to move from Arsenal back to the Netherlands, And it was a time when that happened to a few sort of young Dutch players. They failed being elsewhere. And, this is before they even break through to our first team, and just wanting to return to the Netherlands, get some football, and then make that breakthrough back in the home country, which is what they perhaps should have done in the first place. And Malen went back to PSV and had 4 years there, and had the classic kind of player that rose to the top of the league and then got sold for a lot of money. So in his first year, he's breaking through into the young PSV team that play in the Dutch second division, played as a striker and a winger there. Then in his second season with PSV, was breaking through to the first team, a lot of sub appearances. And then the season after became their main striker. So was then relied upon a lot for goals. If I remember correctly, though, it was then cut short by COVID, and then he had to then have another season after that to really cement himself and get that big move. He was scoring, I think he scored nearly 20 goals in that Eredivisie season. So, yeah, a pretty good return. I think the thing that I noticed about Malen was, even though he was young, he never was able to go on the Champions League stage or even the Europa League stage. Like, I'm here, I am really good. I'm going to get European football. But he's, I remember having a look at his stats earlier. I think he did score some goals in the Europa League one year. PSV got knocked out quite early. He played in a 4-3-3, a typical Dutch one, as a striker, but also as a winger. I think he broke through most of the left winger, then became a striker. And then his final season or so, he was playing as a main striker and playing as a two up top as well, with Zaha, who has now gone on to retire, I think. But yeah, at PSV, they scored a ton of goals. They still do. Very attacking style. Malen was a big part of that. And then he went on to Dortmund. And I can talk more about how he was with the national team a bit later, if you like, because I think he tried to play a bit more development in Germany and changed again as a player.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think, we will come back to this international piece, but there's a couple of interesting pieces you mentioned there. Obviously, leading the line as a striker in that PSV team, playing in a two up top, interesting things I think that Aston Villa would be very interested in that period of time. You mentioned he played off the left as well, because Brian, at Dortmund, he's almost, maybe, looking at his heat maps, he's played across the back, or the front three, should I say, but he's mostly started on that right-hand side, and that's where people are kind of pegging him in at Aston Villa, being that Leon Bailey competition/replacement. Talk to me about his time at Dortmund so far, and what's the feeling of fans towards him and what he's bringing to the team at the moment?
Sure. So I think Michael brings up a good point, and that's something we've talked about a lot on our pod previously, is that in his most successful season at PSV, I think it was 25 goals across the Eredivisie and in the Europa League, and he was playing in that front two sort of situation. Now, context with DONYELL Malen is very important, because you have a player that, very much succeeded as playing as, a striker in a front two, now playing on the right side in a position where he was coming in basically to replace the outgoing Jadon Sancho at the time. And if you think of DONYELL Malen and Jadon Sancho, very different players. Not really, there's not really much comparison there. I mean, Sancho very much has that creative element, going for him. I don't really see that as much from DONYELL Malen. He's not a very assist-heavy player over the course of his time at Dortmund. I mean, last season he had a very good season where I think he scored 13 goals and provided 3 assists across all competitions. So, I mean, you're kind of putting a square peg in a round hole is basically what I'm trying to say. I don't believe that DONYELL Malen is a right winger naturally, and I don't necessarily think that he fits that role. He does have that goal scoring ability, and I think he functions a lot better in a front two, the way that he did at PSV. So it's just been very interesting to see Dortmund try and, bring him in as that Jadon Sancho successor, and him not necessarily, hit the ground running with regards to that. And he also has, very streaky, times of or streaky moments throughout the season, I should say. Basically, he'll go 2 or 3 games where he's scoring, he's in a hot run of form, and then he'll go 5-6 games, for example, where he's not really scoring. So you're basically talking about
Villa, so he'll fit in at Villa if that's the case.
Yeah, so I mean, a very streaky player. Obviously has an eye for goal, but is, at least in my opinion, been very inconsistent for Dortmund, and also not exactly used in his best position.
Do you think that the change from Terzic to Sayan has affected him? Because last year he had a pretty I'm going to call it a prolific season. 13 goals, 3 assists. I think he only started like 27 games as well last year, so he had a pretty good return rate. And yeah, do you think the change of manager has affected him this season?
I think that Dortmund I would say yes, because I do think Dortmund have relied a lot more on that wing play and creation from wing play. So, I mean, you have a player like Jamie Gittins who can come out and both be a creator and a goal scorer. And I think that's more the archetype that, Terzic is looking for. And even if you just compare the two, and this is just coming off of FBref, 3 goals to 1 assist this season for Malen, 9 goals, 3 assists for Gittins. Passes attempted 27 to 28, which is fairly equal. But then you look at the successful take-ons and the progressive carries. You have 1.78 and 3.21 per 90 for Malen. And then you have 3.71 and 6.16 respectively for Gittins. He's very much more of a progressive player, and he's able to progress the ball more. We don't see that as much from Malen, and in the system that Dortmund have been playing, I think that's more important, and that's why he hasn't gotten as many minutes this season or performed as well under Terzic. Under Şahin as he did under Terzic.
One of the biggest things that I've seen when I've watched him, I've watched quite a lot of footage of him over the last couple of weeks, or last couple of days, should I say, since we were linked, is when he shoots, he gets it in target, and that might sound something very simple because God knows Aston Villa, just the game we just played against Brighton, we 20 shots, 4 of them were on target. And like we tend to be wayward in our shooting. So that coupled with the fact that he's got a good conversion rate of shots as well is something that kind of that kind of entices me. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because you mentioned that probably the what's weighing heavy around his neck is the Jadon Sancho replacement piece, because realistically speaking, the only place Jadon Sancho has ever played good football has been at Dortmund so far, and that's going to be a big hole to fill. Is it the fact that maybe he's a bit more economical with his shooting, with his from that point of view, as opposed to maybe the flair play that Sancho showed at Dortmund? Is that maybe why fans are they're kind of longing for Sancho over this guy coming in? Is he more pragmatic in his play style as opposed to maybe Sancho's exuberant creativity?
So I think the key there is what you mentioned. It's the creativity, because once again, when we think of wingers at Dortmund, we think of players like Jadon Sancho, like Ousmane Dembele, very creative players that were able to kind of create something out of nothing. Very spectacular players that were able to turn a game on their head. At least in my opinion, DONYELL Malen has not been that player for us. So I think like I said, I definitely think he has an eye for goal. And I think if he were more predominantly played in a front two, I think that is more his position. And Michael, I guess, could talk a little bit more about that as well, because he saw more of him in the Eredivisie when he was playing for PSV than I did. But I think that that's his best position. I think that's where he performs best. At Dortmund, he's not used in that position. And I think him being played out wide and not really kind of having that creative or progressive, aspect about his game, I think that's what really gets gets under the skin of most fans, because we do have players like Karim Adeyemi, Jamie Gittins, Julian Duranville, and there's players in the academy. Well, now Cole Campbell's had some games in the first team. You have players that originated in the academy, like Cole Campbell, or even younger Ousmane Diallo, all players that fit that more typical winger mold. And frankly speaking, I just don't believe DONYELL Malen is a winger.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. I agree from that point of view. But back to you, Mike, for this question, because that's been some great insight. But you mentioned that he played up top for PSV with was it Xavi? Is he the Israeli striker?
Aaron Zahavi. Yeah.
He was very prolific as well.
Yeah.
Where I presume I can't pronounce his name, but I do know him. I'm familiar with him as a footballer. He's definitely going to be the number 9 in that squad, in that team. So was Malen more the number 10? Was he more like a deep line kind of striker, or was he playing off Xavi more?
They both like to be on the shoulder of the last defender. That's what I remember about both of them. And that's why it was a very attacking style. Roger Schmidt was a manager there.
Yes.
I think where you get the best out of Malen is, and it's funny because you can't really play him up top on his own. As a winger, you kind of, I don't know, gets a bit bogged down. You can't really get the best out of him. On the left, he would cut in a little bit when he was younger. wasn't his best position. It's like where do you put him? What is his best position to get the best out of him as a footballer? Yeah, I think as a front two works well there, and I think being a Villa fan as well, just a very loose comparison, a very bad comparison. He's more Gabby Abondahor and Ashley Young. So he's not. If you play Abondahor as a right midfielder, like does that really work? Are you going to get the best out of him there? I know Abondahor played some time as a winger, but it was more as a 4-5-1, wasn't it? Yeah, it's the same for Malen. I don't really know how he could replace Bailey, say, one day and just play on the right side. I don't know how that works. So I don't know why. At the moment, I found it an unusual rumour, but it sounds like it's got a bit of weight to it. I don't know where it will go through or not. Yeah, I don't know whether he would be best as a second striker then. He'd be a backup striker for sure if Watkins and Duran weren't fit for whatever reason. But I don't know where he fits in best at the moment, other than maybe his versatility will help him out. And we need pace. Really need pace, and he will bring lots of that. I think can I just bring in some of the things I've seen as a Netherlands fan as well. I mean, since he's gone to Dortmund, he's been in and out of the side. I think I had a look at his stats. He's only ever played one full 90 for the Netherlands in his 40-something caps. So he tends to be coming off the bench quite a lot. Or if he does start, he's brought off. And it was the same at the Euros. So he had a really dreadful game when the Netherlands played Austria, if anyone remembers that game. It was a very, it's like a basketball match, classic Villa-Brighton 2-2 draw, kind of that kind of game. And it was, Malen got hauled off towards the end. He scored an own goal. He was tragically bad. And then the next game against Romania, the Netherlands win 3-0 and he scores 2 goals off the same position, off the right wing. He's so inconsistent. He's so streaky. And I think the same's been the case at Dortmund. When he's played for the Netherlands, at times he's looked like the answer on the right wing, because the Netherlands don't have an undisputed right winger. They're either playing Malen there for pace or Xabi Simons, who is much better in the centre of the pitch rather than out wide. As he's not a winger, Malen's not a winger, but you get good pace out of him. The thing that works for the Netherlands is always having a right wing back with Malen. So when he has Dumfries streaking down the right side, that's where Malen was even better, because he could come in and do things more infield. Ball carries are great. Like, he brings the ball forward, very direct, will have a shot. And I kind of agree with that. I do feel like it's quite on target a number of times. Like, he'll wait for that efficient position there to finish. He does get in the box. There's lots to like about him, but yeah, as a Netherlands fan in particular, he's really frustrated me. I mean, at PSV, you're playing in the Dutch league, you can always score goals. His setup there was quite nice, and a 4-4-2-2-2. He was one of the strikers, and that you asked a question there, and I went off a bit of a tangent about what he was doing there, what his position was. But at PSV, when he got so much of the ball, just 2 strikers running around, causing a bit of problems, that worked for PSV, but it never got them far in European competition. Is what I would suggest. It never won them the league. It never got them far in the Europa League or the Champions League. So that, was it the setup? Was it the tactics? Was it the manager? I don't know.
Yeah, I also think as well, Ajax were royally on the cusp of wave at that time as well. But look, as I say, if there's every second year Ajax are on the cusp of a wave, I think, so it can be difficult. You can use that as an excuse every time. One of the things I found with him, guys, and I leave this open to I suppose both of you, and it's something that that I'm always going to want with the way Aston Villa are playing football at the moment, specifically the fact that we seem to be crossing the ball an awful lot in some games. Other games we try and go through the middle. But when we cross the ball, specifically if we have John McGinn on that right-hand side, or we have Leon Bailey on that right-hand side, and they're coming in at the back post, you never feel confident we're going to get anybody who can stick a head in the ball and put it in the back of the net. I watched 7 games that Donyell Malen played, and I always felt he could get in the back, get on the ball at the back post, get on a whip ball at the back post, get his head in it, sliding in, try and bundle him in at the back post. Am I wrong? Like, seven games, I suppose, it's a decent sample set. But am I just seeing 7 of his good games from that point of view, or is that something that you guys have seen? Brian, I'll come to you first on that one.
Sure. I mean, it's kind of like what we've already been saying, right? It might just be a good patch for Malen. But I will say, though, that when it comes to, when he's in the box and when he does get the ball, at close range, he is capable of, putting in a good finish. I mean, I think it was the game against Wolfsburg before the break where I think he was the one who scored the opener. Don't quote me on that because I don't remember exactly, but it was a header from a cross. that came in and dispatched it very proficiently. But once again, it's the streakiness that I would caution as the one red flag for you guys to keep in mind with regards to that.
Yeah, I actually watched that game against Wolfsburg, and it was him, and he did score a header in that game.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for confirming.
He was coming off the right side. So I watched that game. I watched the game that they played in the Champions League against Zagreb when they were
yes.
It came out. I think it was 3-0 winners, if I'm not mistaken. And I watched some other games then as well. I watched his highlights from other games, but I watched those two games in full because they're recent games, and I just wanted to see what he was like in European competition too. Michael, the way the Dutch team played, or not really, like, is that something that you would have seen him do an awful lot as well, getting in the back post for the Dutch team? Like, where does he pop up most for them?
I'm not going to sit here and say I remember him scoring some headers for Netherlands, but I feel like he is a threat in that area. Just from my overall picture of him over the years, he will be a threat in the box from things like that. Yeah, you were right. There are times when Bailey's not a threat from that kind of situation whereas Malen would be. But I always see him as a striker that's been put out on the wing. I never see him as a midfielder or a winger, really. And that's, I mean, Brian's nodding, like he's seeing the same things, I think, where you've got all these great abilities in him, but how do you get the best out of him? And when he plays for Netherlands, his best time on the pitch is when he's dangerous on the counter-attack. So when the Netherlands have had to sit in a little bit, maybe it's later in the game and they want to be of a threat on the counter-attack, then he's brilliant to bring on. Like in the game when they didn't have much of the ball and we're seeing sort of the game out. I think it was a game against Poland in the Euros where he was then brought on to just chase things and to be a threat at the counter, to give Poland something to think about whilst the Netherlands are winning. He's valuable for that. I think he's good from the get-go when he's able to get in the box. But I think just playing him for like a whole 90 on the right side and a 4-4-2, whatever you want to call it, you don't get the best out of him. I think I made a point on that enough, but I think he looking at his stats here, he will have that really good game where he's got a goal and assist, and you think, right, next game we'll put him in, he's going to start the game, and then it just isn't quite the same, isn't quite as good, and then you're like bringing him out the team again, and then he makes an impact again from the bench. You're like, well, give him a chance. It's always been the same for the Netherlands. We've always wanted that striker. The Netherlands, we've never been able to have the past 5-10 years. There hasn't been that player to take on the mantle from Van Persie and co.
Van Persie, yeah.
So when he was coming through, he played a couple of games as a striker, and we thought, oh, brilliant! Like, could this be the one? Could this be the answer? The answer was no, and he fell out of favour a little bit at Dortmund. But then he got the scoring goals again in Germany, and he got back in the Netherlands national team. He was given chances again as a striker, left winger, right winger. In Koeman's second spell in charge of the Netherlands, he seems to have settled more on being a right winger, and that's kind of his position now. I don't see him playing in other positions. It's a 4-3-3. He's playing the right side of that, and he's used for his pace and for carrying the ball forward and causing a danger down there. But on our podcast, like, he will fall in and out of favour with the fans. Like in the live comments, you'll be like, "Oh, bring in Malen, really Malen," and then he plays rubbish, and then it's all about bringing him back out again. And it was that's been done. The story of DONYELL Malen up until now. He's only 25 though, right? So he's still quite young.
25, yeah.
Feels like he's been around for ages.
He looks about 30. You know, yeah. So it does feel like he's been around for ages. But you've said two things, Michael. You equated him to Gabriel like Bonhor, and I'm expecting.
Oh, not quite, but you know,
mad on that one afterwards, because you know how Bonhor does drive traction, I suppose, put it that way, amongst Aston Villa fans. But you also mentioned that he's a bit inconsistent, a bit flaky from that point of view. You know, he puts together 1 or 2 good games, and then could have 3 or 4 bad games. That sounds like the incumbent that we have at right wing as it is in Leon Bailey, albeit last year being the outlier year for him. Last year seemed to have been an outlier, or not an outlier year, but an outlier year in his time at Dortmund, I suppose, really, for DONYELL Malen. We're going to wrap it up in a moment because I know you guys need to be somewhere else. But Brian, I'm going to ask you a very, very simple question: do Dortmund fans like him?
So unfortunately, I can't give you a simple answer for that because it's not a simple answer.
It wasn't going to be.
So I'll speak from my point of view, right? I don't dislike the player. I think there is a talented player there. I think this is a case of a player being misused. But on the flip side of it, if you I don't know how much we want to read into speculation and all that. You see how many times he's already changed agents. You see,
Yes.
over the summer, there was all this like chatter about him leaving. He didn't leave. It could also be, a little bit of he's ready to make the move and he hasn't been able to make the move. So he might be a little bit frustrated with that. So that could also affect his performances for Dortmund. But when it comes to whether we like him or dislike him, I personally don't dislike him. I do think that he is a talented player. It's just that he doesn't fit what Dortmund want, or what Dortmund need, I should say, in where they're playing him. So if he does end up moving to Villa, I do wish him all the best. And yeah, I hope you guys get better use out of him than we did.
That's very interesting. Yeah. And you said there, Mike, as well, with regards to the national team, he's flavoured a month 1 month and he's not in the other month, another month. So he's kind of he splits the fan base. Look, I suppose my thoughts on him is, and I've thought it from watching him too, I think he's going to start out on the right. I think Unai is going to look at him from his positional versatility point of view. The fact that he can get in and score goals. I genuinely believe that Unai and Manchi have looked at his efficiency. That he doesn't take an awful lot of shots, but when he does, he scores 1 and 2 essentially. When he does. I think we're missing that. We've got a John Duran who'll take a shot from a kick out nearly, whenever. He just shoots like mad. Then we've also got the ponderousness at times of other players that we have in the team. We've got Ollie Watkins sometimes maybe takes that extra touch a bit too much. We're not getting goals from midfield as we were maybe at the start of the season or last year. I think Malen's positional versatility, the fact that he could roam across that three behind the striker would be beneficial. I actually think that Unai Emery wants to get Morgan Rogers out on the left more, but hasn't been able to do it recently because we needed somebody to carry the ball through the middle. With having somebody like Malen in the team, if you start them out on the right, you maybe have a McGinn playing in that number 10 position. You maybe swap McGinn, give him a break out in the right hand side. You bring Malen into the center, then you put Malen over onto the left hand side. You keep teams guessing. It gives you that fluidity. But as we know, the game of football isn't that simple. That if you keep doing that, you catch teams out, and it can confuse our team as well. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. I'm like I said previously, I did a piece on him, and I went, there's probably a 30% chance this one actually comes true. This could be one that we're still here looking at this and 17, 18, 19 days time going, well, is he going to sign or is he not going to sign? So we will definitely keep our eyes out on this one. But guys, I want to say thanks so much for your time today. I really, really appreciate it. I really appreciate the honest opinions you guys have given of him as well, because a lot of times, we get people on to talk about players, and players are always good. Oh yeah, he's good. He's a very good player. He's really good. What issues? Why isn't he? Why do Dortmund want to sell him? Well, I think it's just because the money that's coming in. That's sometimes we get that from people who come on the podcast. But you guys have been warts and all about him, which has been really, really good, and I do appreciate that, because that's what the fans want to hear. They want to know what they're getting, and it's not always sunshine and roses with a player, because there is no perfect player out there at the moment. I think so, and I can hear the comments. I can hear people typing already about who their perfect player is at the minute. But thanks so much, guys. Everybody, if you do want to see more, you want to hear more about him, I suppose if this does progress, I'm sure the guys in Dortmund Dispatch, Brian and the guys in Dortmund Dispatch, are going to be talking about it. Go hit them up and listen to their podcast as well. I'm a serial listener to podcasts of other teams as well, specifically when we're linked to players, see what their opinions are. Michael, of course, is doing absolute Trojan work on Football Oranje as well. Go follow him if you're not following him already. And Michael, I think I'm going to get one of those scarves, because orange looks great on me. So I'm going to look forward to one of those scarves. I think that you might have coming out soon in that merchandise line. So thanks a million for your time, guys, and I really, really do appreciate it. And as I say, guys, go follow them on Twitter, go follow them on YouTube, and give those guys your ears, as I say, because they're going to know way more about Daniel Malen. I'm going to be able to speak more honestly about him, I suppose, than any Aston Villa podcast will, because we are hoping he's going to come be the second. He's going to come to our team and be the second coming of Jack Grealish, but it may not be the case. So stick to those guys' ears stick your ears to those guys' podcasts, should I say, for more on this one as well. So thanks very much, guys. I'm going to leave it at that, because I know you guys have to be somewhere else. I really do appreciate your time. Thanks a million, everybody, for watching and for listening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and all that's left to say is up the Villa.